But where they really shine, where I feel like mud gear socks really shine, is when you're doing the long and difficult things like a seesaw or, a long ruck or a Spartan race or any of those kinds of things. I used to lose toenails when I would run long distances because the way that my feet would shift, and I don't know if it had everything to do with my socks, but I don't think it hurt. I used to get blisters when I would be on long rucks until I switched socks, and have never had any problem since with a mud gear sock. And so I think there's a lot of benefits to having them. And I would commend, as I say, or is that the right word? Commend to people, right? Yeah, I would commend to a man. Recommend. I would recommend. I would not only commend, I would do it twice. I would recommend it over and over to a man that, hey, life's too short to have crappy socks. Fair? So go out and grab yourself a pair.
If you're going to be a winner, you're going to need a coach.
Sharpening doesn't happen by accident. A blade left untouched will rust, and a man left unchallenged will stagnate. Every man needs friction, resistance, and a whetstone to grind away weakness and reveal his true edge. Welcome to the Whetstone, where we reject comfort, disrupt the status quo, and forge men ready for impact. Hosted by Dredd, Dark Helmet, and me, The Plague. This is where men step out of the drift and into acceleration, because iron sharpens iron, and no man sharpens alone.
And we're back.
And we're back.
It's easier without a helmet because it's two guys.
Yeah. We got some feedback from Huckleberry, the culture cue.
About socks?
About socks. Apparently,
Okay.
he really wanted to make sure Helmet never shows his foot again on camera. So
Yeah, that's probably fair.
I think
Yeah,
that was
why
maybe
is that?
that was I forgot to edit that out.
Even though there's great socks, we don't need foot displays.
Right. And
Yeah,
but
yeah.
speaking of Huckleberry, I don't know if guys have checked out. He's dropping a lot of COT podcasts,
Yep,
which
saw
have been
that.
pretty good.
Saw that. Yeah, he's down to 6 mistakes, I guess, per episode or something like that.
Yep.
Which is good. It's progress, man.
Yeah, and we're getting some UK guys sort of in the mix. He's got Flea, and then I think they're going to be maybe doing a UK sort of podcast, which would be pretty cool.
Has that started yet?
I don't think it's started yet. I have noticed that I have to, sometimes I listen to podcasts on like a faster speed,
Yeah, and you miss stuff.
With the accent, I got to really slow it down so that I can hear the details. But
yeah, well, it's English, but in a different way.
Yeah. Yep. And things have been going good with the Whetstone. We had so our most recent episode, we really went into kind of some conversation about the F3 Nation board and how the board's been making decisions and how other organizations make decisions. I think I'm still trying to wrap my mind around when you're pursuing an unmeasurable sort of goal, how do you define success? But I think that was a really good conversation. And today, something I wanted to, again, kind of pick your brain on, because I see us doing this really well in F3. But sort of how do we inspire a team or a group to move towards like advantage, maybe is the term, or so you've got kind of a mission or vision, and you want your team to basically do whatever it takes, to get there within certain parameters. And I've noticed that's hard to do sort of in other places, but would love to sort of hear your thoughts. Like, why does that work so well within the F3 framework?
Well, I think part of it is that we have F3 is a movement, right? So we have a defined problem, a proposed solution, and a well-used pathway to accomplish it that we've repeatedly done. So if you're a guy out there who shares the problem, like you say, yeah, the sad clown syndrome is a problem. Dormant male community leadership is a problem. Well, here's a bunch of guys who have a solution, and they can demonstrate success in accomplishing it. So, that's you're gathering those kind of guys in, who are already of that mindset. So then if you have guys like that, and then a challenge confronts the group, like, let's say somebody's child has unexpectedly been killed, right, in a car accident or something. How do we help the family, right? How do we help our brother get through that? Guys start proposing things very quickly, fundraisers, and I mean, bringing food to the people, whatever it is. So you got a pre-sorted group of men together who have leadership, and we have a leadership system already. So they really just apply that template to whatever confronts them. That's what I keep seeing happening.
Yeah.
And whenever I'm in any kind of F3 group, whether it's F3 Metro where I work out or the F3 board, we have what I would think of as a problem-solving format that we apply, which we haven't sat down and really written out. But how do we attack it? First step of any decent problem-solving format is going to be identify the problem, which you would think is simple, but put a group of people together and say, what is the problem? And it's not as easy as it looks. It takes some time. And whoever's leading the group has to be good at it, because you have to ask open-ended questions, and then you have to start, what's the problem? And people start throwing out different stuff, and you kind of pick out a word. If you got a whiteboard, then you write that word up there and then kind of build that around. But you can't move forward in any way until you get the group consensus on what the actual problem is.
Mm-hmm.
What are we trying to solve? Then step 2 in my mind is to list all the facts that are known that are related to the problem, whatever those might be. And people get confused about that too, so you got to keep it simple and move to step 3, which are the assumptions. So what are the assumptions? Not a fact, we don't know, but what can we reasonably infer is true, even though we can't prove it? List all those. So you have your problem defined, you have your facts set out, you have your assumptions made. Then based on that, start developing courses of action, how to solve the problem based on the facts the assumptions you've made, and the problem as you've identified it. And identify discrete courses of action to solve the problem, and then some kind of comparison of the courses of action to determine which one is the best under the circumstances, and take that course of action, get agreement on, say, this is what we're going to implement. So that process that I just described in kind of sketch fashion probably underlies any group that is good at solving problems, does some version of what I just described in some way.
I would be curious your thoughts as you're talking about, you use the word consensus, and I'm curious, like, is it true consensus, or are there moments where you just need commitment to the direction you're going, or how do you do that?
Well, I think when I'm talking about consensus, I'm talking about generalized agreement on a premise. That the premise is, this is the problem. F3, premise, just problem. We need a certain amount of money to continue to operate. We need money somehow, right? That's a problem, right? What do we know? We know how much it costs to the facts. We know how much it costs to operate. We know about assumptions. It'll be an increase in cost going forward. There's going to be unexpected. See, that's what I mean. So getting back to consensus, if you don't have a generalized agreement amongst the members of the group, that indeed that is a problem. One guy says, no, we don't need any money. We don't need any money. So a leader says, what about this bill? How does that get paid? I mean, if you get to a point where you can't get a consensus, I think a consensus means that everybody's 100%. That's generally true, right? Commitment to me comes later in the process when you have identified a course of action. You compared and you contrasted the different courses of action, and you said, okay, this is the best course of action. So we've been doing these hymn society things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Scratch and Win came up with that idea. Which you guys just did, right? Did you guys just do one?
Yeah.
That was the course of action that was agreed upon. So commitment, what does commitment to that look like? Well, yeah, we're gonna while we're doing this and using this course of action to raise the money we need to solve the problem, we're not going to be distracted by anything. We're not going to, in the middle of it, say, oh, wait, let's do this. Let's have a raffle. No, we agreed on this, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then the leader's job is to take that course of action and define it into steps, subtasks, delegate what's necessary, and then effectuate it. Commitment to it has to be, this is the course of action. We're going to do this. Doesn't mean that when you debated courses of action that you necessarily agreed that this is the best. You could have been overruled. You could have thought, no, we need to do a raffle, a giant raffle. But you got outvoted, or the Nantan said, I've thought about it. We're going to go with the him. Well, at that point, you don't say, yeah, I want a raffle, so I'm going to obstruct this.
Right.
If you do, but the exception to this is if the course of action to you is so wildly wrong and inconsistent with the overall mission of the group that you can't commit to it, then you got to go.
You got to go. Yeah. Yeah. I think I see a lot of sort of passive, like people will verbally agree to commit, but then their actions are not aligned. And so you're sort of like, I thought we were committed, or, I thought we were going this direction. So I think that's a lot. I know a lot of the conversations I have at work are sort of around that. Hey, we're committed to this, but the actions don't align. But
sure.
Well, talk me through sort of in that process. One of the things, and I think maybe last time Dark Helmet and I were talking, it was he sort of brought up like VAPE, like sort of the vision, articulation, persuasion, and exhortation as the leader in those scenarios. We need to be good at using that. I don't know, how do we get better at articulating vision?
Practice. I think we say in Q Source, everyone has visions.
Mm-hmm.
But not everyone articulates them. And I think some of the reasons we identify is, number one, people are bad at it. That's reason number one. And you're never going to get good at anything unless you practice. You have a vision. It's unique. It's accomplishable. It's important. It's good. But you don't tell anybody. You don't know how to get your point across. So you keep it to yourself. Or you run into obstacles. First guy you tell is like, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you shy away. Instead of saying, why not? Because the guy might offer legitimate criticisms of the way you articulated it that allow you to sharpen up your message.
Interesting.
Or he might just be opposed to any vision. He might be so wedded to the status quo. If vision is an advantage, right? Identifying an advantage and the movement required to achieve it, the movement might daunt him. You can think of people that you've encountered in life who, regardless of what it is, it requires any movement whatsoever, they immediately reject it. In fact, that's most people.
Yeah.
Because the status quo is a powerful magnet and people cling to it. And all they can see is potential discomfort, and they're afraid, particularly if they've spent their life avoiding movement. Now, if you're talking about people that have moved before, the template they use in their own lives to accomplish that is applicable everywhere. I mean, it isn't the same thing they did last time. So you take somebody, I'll give you a real life example. Let's take somebody who grows up in a town, small town, goes to community college, moves into his parents' house after they retire, and has lived there for 40 years, and now he's 60. Let's make him my age, 61. And you say to him, let's say he's living in Ames, Iowa. Okay. You're living in Ames, Iowa. You're going to move from Ames, Iowa to Lansing, Michigan. Well, to that dude, that seems like a huge thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he never even really left home.
Right.
Maybe he doesn't like Ames, Iowa very much. And maybe he did visit Lansing, Michigan, and he did like it. It's an advantage. It's a better place. He wants to go. But he's never packed his bags before. He's never rented a U-Haul. He's never moved to a new town, and it just daunts him. Now, Compare that to a soldier who's been in the Army for 20 years. 20 years, you're probably going to make at least 5 moves. 5 times we used to say, picked up bag and baggage and moved. 5 times. Well, the process you used the last 4 times is, first time seemed like a thing, second time not so much, third time, oh well, fourth time, sure, ready. I mean, it's even though you're moving from, Kaiserslautern, Germany this time to Fort Stewart, Georgia, that's the first time you've ever been. It's the same as when you move to Kaiserslautern. It's not that different. At least the location is different, but the template you applied was the same. Well, that guy's going to be more capable of doing it. So a leader, when he articulates, now we're moving into persuasion, articulates the vision, he starts getting pushback. Well, is the guy pushing back at me because there's flaws in my articulation? Or is the vision miscast? Like it's not that great a vision. Or is he afraid to move because he's never done it before? How do I get down to the bottom of it? And the best way to do it is start asking questions. Well, what's your opposition to Lansing, Michigan? Well, it's not Lansing per se. I mean, is Lansing a better place? Yeah, I think it might be a better place. But there's reasons why you don't want to move there. Yeah, there's reasons why I don't want to move there. Have you ever moved anywhere before? Well, no, I haven't. I said, is that one of the reasons why you don't want to move this time? How hard do you think it's going to be? I don't know. Have you never done anything like that before? All right. Well, I have. It's not as onerous as you might think. In fact, it's exciting in a way. And now we're into persuasion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Initiating first movement. And get them focused on that first step. First step might be to find out what the market is for houses that you sell your house names. Maybe call a realtor and ask them. They tell you it's a hot market. You might feel pretty good about that.
Mm-hmm.
That first movement. Once you get a guy moving, taking that movement is its own grease. Start getting things done. Start knocking off a task list, and it just kind of propels you along.
Yeah.
So that's why VAPE works. Now, you get a guy moving and he bumps into an obstacle. This is where exhortation comes in, incentivizing the breach of obstacles. Of course, when you move, there are going to be obstacles. And of course, the mind unaccustomed to movement is going to see every molehill as a mountain. So the leader, the virtuous leader, is able to right-size the obstacle. It's not actually a mountain. Or it's a big hill, but you're the kind of guy who can breach that. You can climb that hill. And the process I'm describing, you get better at it as a leader if you keep doing it. And you can almost anticipate the kind of things followers are going to say when you convene a group of followers. Now, shared leadership is an F3 leadership principle. That's influence through combination. We don't try to influence. We don't try to lead as solos. So, you sit in your own room, write on your own whiteboard, plan of action, whatever, come out and tell people what to do. That is a form of leadership. It's not shared leadership.
Yeah.
It's not shared leadership. Shared leadership is based on consensus. Because you want every guy walking out of the room being a mini advocate for the advantage sought. Yeah. You want him out there in his own way, selling it and moving forward on it.
Yeah.
Now that's kind of an F3 thing, right? Every man a leader.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is like the vision. Well, maybe it's the problem. I don't know if it's the vision or the problem for F3 is built in a way that we see all these guys pursuing the mission, but also it's empowering them to come up with their own, I think ULP, right? Universal life problem or whatever you want to call it. Right. And so then it's like and then that further serves the mission. So I don't know if there's like, is the secret there, the coming up with a really good mission that applies broadly, or I don't know. How does it work?
Well, I think broad F3's mission is pretty broad, right?
Yeah.
Plant, serve, grow men's small workout groups in order to invigorate male community leadership. Well, within plant, serve, and grow is a lot of, you're going to have a guy who says, man, we need a workout in Ames, Iowa. Just got to have one there. My brother-in-law lives there. I was up there last weekend, bunch of sad clowns drifting around. Well, do you want to be the want to make that happen? Yeah, I really want to do it. There's not much more that guy needs, right?
Mhm.
I mean, he might say, "Will you help me?" I can't help you, but here's a dude who might help you, interested in it, or here's how you would go about recruiting people, whatever. But that's the most basic, because that is planting. Serving is incredibly broad. I'm going to say it's unlimited.
Mhm.
What are the limits to serving a men's small workout?
Yeah, it could be
So,
leading the workout, cleaning up the
right,
park. I mean, it
right.
could be, yeah.
I love Slack because I love to see just all these different things,
Mhm.
and guys from different places. They have 3 Slack channel. Uh, there's at least 5 different guys across F3 that I've seen who have a ULP of suicide,
Yep.
which, because of my hardwiring, I turn rage outward. I mean, if depression is rage turned inward, I think I read that somewhere. When I encounter disappointment, obstacles, whatever, I think about killing somebody else. Just kidding. But I never think of killing myself. But there's a lot of men who do. And when they do, uh, man, you hear stories I heard the story. I could not believe a guy said that he had decided to commit suicide. He's an F3 guy. And he drove up to some mountainous place to do it, and brought his gun with him to do it in the glove compartment. He was sitting there having that last moment, and remembered he had the cue the next day, and drove back down the mountain. I mean, that's
Wow.
incredible.
Yeah.
And, you know, to I assume that suicide arises from lack of hope. You've hit obstacle after obstacle, and you have no hope of a better tomorrow. None at all. Um, I define hope as a Christian as blessed assurance and future expectation of a life spent with Christ, an eternity. Right? That's for me for hope.
Yeah,
When I
same.
bang into an obstacle, a worldly obstacle, my salvation is assured. I have a reasonable expectation, because God said so, that at some point, whether because Jesus is coming down tomorrow, or I'm going up there, hopefully in a few more years from now, that that's my destiny, future destiny.
Right.
That provides me with everything I need, the armor I need to get through the day, of ever thinking of ending it. But for a man who does not have that hope, he's hit that point where I just can't get through another day. There's just no reason. It's super difficult for me to even identify with that. These 5 guys out there in F3 Nation, mental battle. There's another guy, I can't even remember where I saw this from. And he's putting all this great stuff on there. Oh, that's serving F3, that's serving small workout groups, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I've never been in an F3 meeting at any level of leadership where we said, we got to attack the mental battle. We got to attack, never heard a guy say it. And yet, here's these guys coming out of the woodwork. Sometimes they'll say, do I have permission to start this? Of course, we say, yeah, of course. Well, you don't need our permission.
Yeah.
But I think we're past that now. Most guys just say, yeah, this is service, right? And they just do it. They just do it. They do it. Or a guy who really cares about gear. We have a guy here, Forge Gear Guy, right? And he's got a separate Twitter handle that just puts gear stuff out. I think I call him the Daily Gear, and I throw that out every time I see him. Throw something out, because the guy's like, I tested three shoes for the Hoka 175. I'm like, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Right.
Right?
Yep.
I wouldn't do it. You have 3 kettlebells. You should have one for. I wouldn't figure that out.
Yeah.
This guy did it.
Yep. This is
You know?
Forge that's on Hunt for Wellness,
Forge.
right?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, same guy.
Yeah. Okay.
So I work out with him. He's actually my neighbor as well.
Cool.
And he will come up to you at a workout and say, talk about testosterone or protein or whatever he's into, and the best sandbag, and I'm listening or not. He goes, "You're not listening to what I'm saying." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm listening, but I'm just going to take your advice."
Right. You're the gear guy. Yeah.
Well, yeah. What do you think the best sandbag is? I don't know.
Right. Right.
I'm not going to take, why would I reinvent the wheel master?
Yeah.
You're the guy, right?
Yeah.
So that to me is F3 should be an example of a group, I hope, an organization that knows how to harness the power of its individual leaders.
Uh-huh.
And if you have a good idea, this is the reverse flow incubator, which I think is free to lead. I don't think that's Q source. I think it's mentioned in the Q source. But the reverse flow incubator is how we're different as an organization. Is we're not from the top saying this is what we should do. We're looking at the bottom, but there's no bottom. We're looking out in the regions and saying, where are you right? What ideas do you have? How can we help promote them? And because the flow goes in the other direction.
Yeah.
Everybody should be using the same F3 kettlebell. No.
Right.
I think how self-defeating that is anyway. There's some dude out there who cares about kettlebells so much that he's like testing them and figure, why wouldn't we want to harness the power of?
Yeah.
If you talk to a guy in a regular organization, it's frustration. Why are you frustrated working for, Husqvarna or whatever? I got this great idea for a chainsaw. Nobody will listen to me. What's your job? I'm a chainsaw tester. It doesn't even make any sense what organizations do in my mind.
Right.
Why wouldn't you want to listen?
And that's where because like in my mind, as I look at like the mission of F3, it's the plant grow serve, right? So those are sort of like the ways that the mission is maybe fulfilled, and then you have this problem in there, right? Like because in order I have to at some point agree that male community leadership needs to be invigorated.
Sure. And you may not. And if you don't,
then don't come. Yeah.
Well, you can work out with us, but
yeah.
If you're going to come in and say, well, I think what we should actually be doing is making sure that everybody has enough, access to flowers for Valentine. That's not what we do, man.
Right.
That's not what we do.
Yeah, and I think if I remember Free to Lead, you and OBT and some of the guys early on sort of like happened upon the problem maybe, but in like an organization, like I think what I'm hearing you say is if I wanted to define, the problem that my team is trying to solve, the best way to do that is to maybe come up with a few ideas, but sit down and get the team to sort of weigh in on that.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
That whiteboard has followed me. I'm not in the same office I used to be, but that whiteboard, same whiteboard, you can see it's kind of scarred up, or maybe you can't tell.
Yeah.
I've had that whiteboard for 15 years, more than that. And OBT has sat down in my office, and I think we had a couple other guys there with us, and we sat there with that whiteboard and we defined the problem. We went through it, we defined the problem, and we talked about it, and then we defined the problem, and then we came up with a mission statement based on that task and purpose, wrote it out, erased, worked on it, and then came up with that on that whiteboard. And that whiteboard is there for a reason. So if you come in my office, whether we're talking about F3, we're talking about, you see my legal, I love me wall behind me. You come in here and ask me about legal issues. I do the same thing. Tell me what happened. Tell me what the problem is with my clients or whatever. The whiteboard's a freaking magical thing, right?
Yeah. What do you remember any of the other potential problems that you guys had sort of come up with for the beginning of F3?
Yeah, I think we were maybe focused on the first F a lot more initially.
Okay.
Thinking that it wasn't dormant male community leadership, but it was obesity.
Okay.
Or just lack of fitness or whatever. I think, we were spending a lot of time on that. And again, this is 4 months into F3.
Yeah.
Which it was not F3. It was AG, Campos AG or whatever.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then what we were observing this. I mean, what we essentially said, what problem are we solving?
Mm-hmm.
And so, we went through the 3 Fs, at least the 3 Fs, which is inconsistent male fitness, not obesity. So we started with obesity and said, it's not really obesity. It's inconsistent male fitness. It's the flux, right?
Pogo 40, yeah.
Yeah, it's the Pogo 40. That's actually the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then what about the second F? Well, lack of male friendship,
Mm-hmm.
male loneliness. Of course, now what New York Times and Harvard Business Review write about all the time. We grassrooty, just idiots, identified that because we're living it. And I'm sure, I am sure the dude living in Stamford, Connecticut, working at the New York Times, knows a lot about male loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
He's just writing about it in a way that his editors will publish it. And because he's where he is, he can't see the solution right in front of his face.
Yeah.
So the third F, as far as faith, we came through lack of purposefulness, not lack of faith. Because we're in Charlotte. I mean, most of the guys we know go to church.
Yeah.
Whether or not what they really believe or don't believe, is not. I'm not. But most guys went to church. That wasn't it. It was what OBT and I called. I think it's in Free to Lead, change jingling, which is the church we attended at the time together. Had this big message board, electronic message board, and on Sunday mornings it would say, these are the services, but then it was a Bible study hour at 10 o'clock, and it would list these things you could go to, which weren't really Bible studies. They were what you would call community hygiene things, And you would see dudes standing there with their hands in their pocket trying to figure out what to do, jingling their change.
Yeah.
And I would say, hey, Tim, a lot of change jingling going on over there. Right? Because if you don't have a purpose defined in your mind, then, you see a list of at least superficially positive things. Like, I forget some of those things they had. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that sounds good. I might as well go to that. Like, I remember one was they had a deal where a nurse practitioner would come in and you could bring your medication to her and she could look at it and tell you whether or not any of these were dangerous together. So I don't know if you've ever seen his Plagu. You're a pretty young dude, but the older you get, the more prescription medicine that, Fox News convinces you to get. You get these little square boxes. There's an M for Monday, Tuesday, and you're supposed to put them in the boxes. You ever seen that?
Yeah. I'm a nurse by background, so I've seen that for sure.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Mostly in like nursing homes and stuff,
Right. Okay. Well, then you've seen that.
Yeah.
You got one that make your urine more ropey or whatever. I don't know. You got one for hypertension, whatever those things are. I'm adverse to unnecessary medication, but if you were prescribed these things inconsistently by different doctors, some of these things you shouldn't take, Forblitum with Bablitum, on or whatever. And this nurse would look at all your, and so this was during the Sunday school. And maybe I shouldn't make fun of that. You're a nurse. You tell me, is that a deal? Is that a thing? Maybe it's a big thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's
right.
interesting. I'm with you, right? I would say even as a healthcare professional, I'm adverse to taking unnecessary medications. But I do think
I know we're getting far afield, but I feel like you're watching Fox News and they show you these commercials for things you don't even know exist.
Right.
Restless leg syndrome, or thin urine. And they give it a name. And you think, well, how do I ask your doctor about this stuff? And you go and ask the guy, I don't know, I guess to avoid malpractice, he's like, yeah, sure, whatever, take this.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know how it works.
Yeah, I think, and there's a lot of those meds, but I totally get what you're saying. I think it's interesting just as we're thinking about organizations and just F3 and how things work. One of the questions on my mind is like, as I'm trying to do this, and maybe with my family, right? Maybe I want to convince my family to start going to church if they're not going to church, or maybe I want to convince my team at work that they should.
Let's start with your family,
Yeah.
because the family is the bulwark of liberty, and the father is the sentinel of the family. So bulwark being, wall, the wall that protects the fort and all that. Sentinel being the guard out on the bulwark. Family is the most important
I mean, does
team,
vape,
right?
assuming the vape thing works with my family too, right?
If you can't vape your family, then you can't vape anything else.
Yeah.
I think about it.
Except for an
Because
e-cig or something, right?
yeah, I don't know about your family, but my family is a communist organization.
Yeah.
So, I'm a liberal, so I'm adamantly opposed to government intervention at every level. So of course communism is like I'm completely opposed to it writ large. But within my family, my wife and I are the Politburo. My little my not little anymore, but my children are the Communist Party members. And from each to their ability to each to their need, just pure communism. We hold all properties held in common. We got the means of production held jointly, and I am the premier. And if I decide we're going to church on Sunday, by God, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm not the least bit interested in what uh, the the proletariat have to say about that until I am.
Yeah. Until it
Which
does.
means
Has that worked for you, that model?
sure,
Okay.
sure. So within the family, it should be communistic. I mean, I'm not going to tell my kids, you eat what you kill. No, I mean, uh, that's not how it works within the family. So because of that, the way you will lead your family is going to be different than the way you're going to lead a business unit. The principles are the same. The way you put them into practice, of course, is different. So,
Okay.
Let's take the idea of going to church on Sunday. Your kids are what age?
9, 3, and 8, and we take them, right?
Sure.
But I hear
How
I
much
hear that,
say? How much say do you want them to have in that at 9, 8?
for us, really, and based on our beliefs, like it really is our choice, right? We are at their ages, we're telling them this is a
Yeah,
priority, right? And so,
right.
but I
You're
do hear
you're
some guys
you're
struggle with that.
Stalin. You're Stalin.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Uh, you're not George Washington.
yeah. We
Right.
make them
You're not
sit
Abe Lincoln.
we make them sit in the pew with us too. There's no going to kids church or any of that. They gotta,
Right.
the
That's right.
9-year old's got to listen and follow along, and then the 3-year-old gets to color, and
That's right.
the 8-month-old, well, she just does what she's the most selfish of all of us anyway.
That's right. That's right. So, uh, really, the person you have to convince is your wife if she's not convinced.
Yeah, yeah,
That this is what you need to do and why.
yeah,
Because whereas the I think we say that the family's a community, right?
hmm,
Because you live in close proximity, but there's nothing the children have to do to be part of the community.
right,
Just live there, follow the rules. Your wife and you are a team that serves the community.
hmm,
So you have to lead your wife, but you don't have you have to lead the kids, but in a different way. But you have to share leadership with your wife.
yeah.
Obviously, I mean, if you're not a virtuous leader with your wife, you certainly will not be one at your business
Anywhere
unit.
else. Yeah. Yeah.
Anywhere
It
else.
kind of goes back to that. A few episodes ago, we were talking about essentially a lot of guys don't have their home life worked out, but they still want to go start a rescue mission, type of thing. But well, so then applying some of those principles, and I guess, This may be a little bit of a tangent, but I think because I hear this so often, still kind of thinking about like a family or maybe even a guy. So maybe it's a guy that maybe it's not a guy in my shield lock, but a guy that I care about because he's an F3 guy. And sort of this idea that like, and the reason I'm asking you this is because you just wrote an article about this, but I hear a lot of guys sort of say, well, I don't mind God, right? I believe there's a God, but it's organized religion is what I have a problem with.
Yeah.
And I don't know if would you be willing to share some of that sort of, because the article you wrote I think was really, really spot on, and I think where maybe showcases how guys can sort of move past that obstacle if they've sort of ran into this conflict with organized religion.
Yeah, I think that organized religion has been by the devil, but as a way to unshake us from our relationship with God. In my church, we refer to the devil as the splitter because he splits man from God and man from man. Like an axe handle.
Genesis 3, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Does it in a variety of ways. One of those ways is to convince us that there's something wrong with a religious group that has actual structure in the sense that it is an organization. It's organized. Religion, and we define the terms, religion just comes from ligament, right? Which is because you have a healthcare background, you know what a ligament is. Right? It's a binding. It's a living, breathing binding that holds bones together, right? I mean, it's absolutely necessary. And so that's the root of the word religion. And that's what religion is designed to do. Religion binds us to God. It's a set of beliefs and foundational precepts and understandings that bind us to God and then bind us to other men. That's what religion is. To say it's organized is simply to say it has a systematic approach. Mm-hmm. It's systematized because it makes it more effective. So to organize something is good on its own. Religion or ligaments are good on their own. Why putting those two things together is a bad thing. That idea would only come from the splitter. Now, how do you help a man who says, look, I feel like I want to get closer to God, pick your denomination or whatever, but I am put off by all the bad things that organized religion has done? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you could say, like what? And he says, well, let's take the Spanish Inquisition, for instance. That was organized religion doing bad things. Well, actually, but brother, that was people doing bad things in the name of organized religion. Using draping themselves with the banner of organized religion to allow them to do something that God would never want done. Mm-hmm. God, I'll put it this way. I'm fairly certain from my rudimentary understanding of Judeo-Christian theology that God never asked any of us to torture another human being to force him to believe what we believe. Fairly certain. Fairly certain. Would be opposed to that. So things done in the name of organized religion take away the agency of the actor. It's the evil person or the person driven by evil who does the thing he wants to do and then says, I did it in the name of organized religion. It ain't organized religion's fault. That's a category error. Right. People do things. Concepts don't do things. Right. Old, guns don't kill people. People kill people. That's exactly true. It's the same premise. Yeah. So that's why I wrote the whole article, is because I believe that our faith problem here in America stems to a great degree of guys trying to do it alone. Right. I mean, yeah, I don't think I think there's a lot. I think the level of God belief in America is a lot higher than polls and surveys would tell us. What people are reacting to is They don't want to say, well, I belong to the Presbyterian church because it's organized religion. And organized religion is, well, your best place to find a deeper relationship with God and with your fellow God-fearing man is in the house of worship, established, run, funded, and kept active by, in the name of, organized religion.
Mm-hmm.
So if you reject it, you are rejecting your best course of action to achieve the thing that you say you're concerned about. What is your problem? Well, I feel alienated from God and my fellow man. There is a place, in fact, multiple places in Charlotte, thousands of them, designed to help you solve that. What are those places? They're called churches. Oh, they're part of organized religion.
Right.
Yeah, but you're the same. It's the same as saying, gee whiz, I've got pneumonia and it's killing me. Well, how about we go to a hospital? A hospital, what is it? It's a big building with windows, but that's not important right now. That's the place where they're going to heal you.
Right.
It's designed to do that.
Yeah.
Live, so you can see where people have been misled
Yeah.
to think that the solution is not, in fact, a solution, or they're using that as an excuse to procrastinate.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
that's possible.
Yeah. One, and I wonder too, if sort of when we think about, earlier in the conversation, when we're trying to create consensus on defining a problem or getting people to move from status quo, just this idea. I remember reading this article that you wrote, and the idea of the category error was really sort of eye-opening. Like how often is the lack of consensus just because you've got people are making these category errors for a lot of things, right? Like,
Sure, right.
So I think
False,
that's a really
false dichotomies.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. If I'm in favor of enforcing the immigration laws of the United States, then I must hate immigrants. No,
Right.
that's not my only two choices. Love immigrants or enforce the laws are not my only two choices. That's a false dichotomy.
Right.
And category is the same thing. Attributing characteristics to things to which that characteristic does not apply. And those are argumentative techniques that require argumentative defenses that have fallen out of favor. Was my law partner and I were laughing today because there's a particular judge in our county who seems tired of being a judge. He, said, well, I don't understand why you're coming here just disagreeing about this stuff. Why can't you find a way to agree? I said, that's what we do, Judge.
Yeah. Is that,
right. That's what we do. And, if you could name, I could agree with 90% of what my opponent is saying, but I'm being paid to disagree on behalf of my client who does.
Right.
And now it's just like a difficult thing for people to get through their heads because, and this is to me is part of GOO, the philosophy of universal happiness, that we should somehow do away. The problem we have is people being unhappy because we all have disagreements. No, that's not a category. That's a false dichotomy.
Mm-hmm.
We have problems.
Yeah.
And those problems have existed, and they're the same problems that have always existed. The central problem is sin in the life of man, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the central chapter 3 of Genesis. That's the central promise. We got to get back to the garden. That's the central problem. Now, we Christians believe there is a solution to that problem. In fact, that solution has already been enacted, and we're simply patiently waiting for the final act of that solution. That's what we believe as Christians. And while we wait, we've been given work to do here in the world that God created, but is under the dominion of the devil right now.
Yeah.
And patiently waiting in a world dominated by dark principalities. Our enemy is not flesh and blood. It's those dark principalities. It's those spiritual powers, the spiritual powers of darkness. And we just have to patiently oppose them. And that requires maturity, the ability to actually argue. And by argue, I don't mean be unduly contentious. I mean to to juxtapose opposing viewpoints for the purpose of learning.
Yeah.
So, I find that most people that reject truth do it for two reasons. One, they don't know what they're rejecting. They don't know. Or two, they do know, they just want to wait another day where they are.
Yeah.
It's the movement that they're afraid of.
Yeah, and I think for me, I've noticed you mentioned in there some of the techniques, and sort of I've noticed that my willingness to engage in that conflict sometimes demonstrates how much I really love that person or the sort of problem I'm trying to solve. Right? If I truly love the person I'm trying to sort of influence, then having that conversation or asking why, right? Just asking more questions. But sometimes I notice like I can give up quickly because it's like, and then I'm like, well, do I really care about that thing if I'm willing to just sort of drop my perspective, and I love this idea of having a world with just more healthy conflict. And, it seems like the more we talk about it, it only makes it worse to live without it. But let's talk about it. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice?
Oh. Well, are you doing that because Brian Wilson just died?
No, I was not.
So that's Pet Sounds, right? That's wouldn't it be nice?
Yep.
Brian Wilson just died.
Okay. I did not know that. Like today?
I think it's today. Yeah. So for those out there who don't know, Beach Boys, good band in the 60s, Brian Wilson comes the genius behind that. And I can't remember which album Pet Sound was for them. It was, fifth, sixth album or whatever, but it is, some people believe that it's the best rock and roll album ever.
Yeah.
And I think that
God only knows.
God only knows. Right?
Yeah.
God only knows. And it really is. So it's funny how things happen. My wife loves that particular album. She went to see, Brian Wilson, and I don't know if anybody in the original played just Pet Sounds a few years ago. So he was 82 when he died. And this is probably maybe 3 years ago.
Nice.
And she really got into it. But just the other night, my wife and I sat on our back porch just listening to it together.
Nice. Good timing.
It's interesting timing, because it really is a brilliant, God only knows, it's a great song.
Well, I appreciate you, brother. This was great.